Pay certain executives off the books, so the company could pay less on its payroll taxes, and those executives could pay less in income taxes. Weisselberg himself is said to have avoided taxes on nearly $2 million in income, including fringe benefits like a luxury apartment, couple of Mercedes-Benz cars for himself and his wife, even tuition at private school for his grandchildren.
The same judge who approved the search warrant for Mar-a-Lago will today decide if the affidavit used for the FBI search should also be unsealed. Following a scathing internal review, there's a major overhaul coming to the Centers for Disease Control.
CDC Director Dr. Rochelle Walensky saying her agency took too long to put out information and that the agency's decision-making guidance is often confusing. She also says that staff turnover during the early months of COVID created gaps and challenges for others who were trying to protect people and produce reliable tests and vaccines. The CDC director promising to release information faster.
ABC's Andy Field. ABC's Ariel Reshev has more on the White House monkeypox response team that'll make its first public appearance today.
There are now 9 children, at least, with presumptive cases of monkeypox in this country. The White House now has a team dedicated to tackling the monkeypox outbreak. We know they're going to be holding their first briefing. We expect to learn more about their strategy.
First, it was drought and heat and fires. Now parts of England and France are being slammed by violent storms. In Paris, rain flooding subway stations. Winds 60 miles an hour felt at the top of the Eiffel Tower. This is ABC News.
Dan owed an unbelievable amount of money to the IRS.
I got behind on my taxes. It's a horrible feeling.
He was in denial.
And when I got those letters from the IRS, you wanted to act like they didn't exist.
Finally, Dan turned to Optima Tax Relief, the leading tax resolution firm. A-plus rated by the Better Business Bureau, they've resolved over $1 billion for their clients.
Optima got me a settlement with the IRS. These people are really people-friendly. It was every bit of a new lease on life for me.
The fast action and the great results made Dan's head spin.
I felt like I was in a dream, but it's real, and I have paperwork to prove it. They got the job done, and life is good.
For tax help you can trust, call Optima now for a free consultation.
If you're worried about what's going to happen with the IRS, stop worrying. Make the call now.
Call 800-343-6460. 800-343-6460. 800-343-6460.
Optima Tax Relief.
Testimonial from an actual client. Some restrictions apply. For complete details, please visit OptimaTaxRelief.com.
Some bad habits built up by a lot of drivers across the country during COVID appears to be sticking around and making roads more dangerous.
The January through March period of this year was the 7th consecutive quarter of increases in the number of fatalities on the nation's roadways, continuing a trend that began at the height of the pandemic. But the increases were not across the board. The Southeast region, including Florida, had no increase in traffic deaths. California and Arizona saw that.
He's flooded with opioids at the height of the crisis, could be getting hundreds of millions of dollars from 3 pharmacy giants, CVS, Walgreens, and Walmart. ABC's Victor Okendo has details.
The federal judge in this landmark lawsuit claiming that the way those companies distributed opioids to customers caused severe harm to their communities. The money here, $650 million, will be used to help fight the continuing opioid crisis and the families destroyed by this in Lake and Trumbull counties just outside of Cleveland.
All 3 companies say they will appeal. In Saudi Arabia, a doctoral student has been sentenced to 34 years in prison for her tweets. The sentence for what the prosecutors say amounted to spreading rumors and retweeting dissents. And arrested in Venice, 2 surfers who rode motorized surfboards through the city's canals. The boards, worth $25,000, have been seized by the riders, are being fined in Venice $1,500. This is ABC News.
Staples has everything for school at great prices. So this year you won't go back to school. You'll be ready to move forward with all your school printing from Staples.
Okay, class, refer to the seating chart for your desk assignment. Class?
But we can't read yet.
Don't worry, they'll get there. Now get 30% off school-related prints when you spend $25 or more. This year, go forward to school with Staples. In-store only, exclusions apply. 1 coupon per customer ends 8/27. Visit staples.com/school printing for coupon and requirements.
I'm Sherry Preston, ABC News.
We're tracking a few isolated showers here for our Thursday. Otherwise, we'll see partly cloudy skies and highs in the low 80s. Into tonight, we drop into the upper 60s with mostly cloudy skies and a few isolated showers. Friday is looking a little bit wetter into the afternoon. I think we'll start the day off fairly dry, but we'll see a few showers and storms into the afternoon. More clouds than sunshine, and highs will only make it into the upper 70s and low 80s, and just a touch of humidity as well. I'm meteorologist Anthony Baglione in the Weather Center.
It's time now for My Great America with Jim and Butch, a conversation about positive things about this great country. And now here are Jim and Butch.
Well, I say good morning again to Butch Maltby, my co-host of My Great America with Jim and Butch. He's on the telephone with me this morning, folks. I love your studio, Butch.
Well, you know what, Jim? I first of all, I love the opportunity to have an uplifting conversation with my friend Jim Bishop every Tuesday and Thursday, 9:05 to 9:30. Of course, we always want to celebrate the grand country that we live in, the goodness and the graciousness of God. And, we have so much negative news. When you and I sat there at Small Town Coffee Roasters going on a couple of years ago, we both said, you know what, let's bring positive, encouraging news to Rutherford County. And that's what we try to do in the midst of it all. And so today, Jim, I have the opportunity to be sitting on these tidal boundary waters off the coast of Charleston in an unnamed place. But, this morning I came out early, and, of course, the boat's right here. I sent you a little picture of that. And, what's great is you just look out in the water, and it's like life. You don't know what's underneath, but then every so often, as was the case this morning, this little, I don't know what they call them. They call them a gaggle of geese. I don't know if it's a pod, but this little group of dolphins came right up next to the dock, and it was like God's encouragement. You know what? I made all of this, Butch. I made the boundary waters. I made the tidal marshes. I made the swirling eddies and the tidal pools and all the fish and the flora, the fauna. God made all of it, Jim. He didn't create a monochromatic black and white world filled with all kinds of drab hues. He gave us just a canvas each and every day if we will stand and acknowledge his presence. And I've been invigorated this morning. I've got an uncle, my Uncle Lee. I've got lots of uncles and aunts. My mom's the oldest of 11. But he is convinced that salt air will cure anything.
Yes, I agree with him.
You do?
Yes.
Well, I'm telling you, everything from eczema to emphysema, he thinks it's going to take care of it. But I can tell you, I love the salt air. I love to get up early, hear what God has to say, because when we lock in on that, we know what it's like when we have a GPS system and we're going to an unknown destination. None of us know what the days ahead are going to be in life, but we know that there's a spiritual GPS. It's God's word, and if we keep ourselves engrossed and engaged in that, not all the negative stuff or negativity, as you often say, Jim, it changes our life. Watched it do it in your life, and it certainly is doing it in mine as well.
And as God created all of these things, he said that's good.
He said that's good.
Yes, he said that's good.
That's right. So he wasn't doing it for the pleasing comments of men. Now, listen, we're going to have a little giveaway, and I don't know if we have fishermen and fisherwomen, but here's the deal. So I was walking down near the dock, and I saw a particular species of fish. This was a good-sized one. It's called the sheep's head fish. Now, get ready to go to your phones because we're going to do a giveaway in just a minute. Now, I'm told that this fish commonly reaches 10 to 20 inches, but it can get to be as large as almost 3 feet. And, it's interesting because often what will happen is I'm told they'll come up near piers because they like to scrape and eat the barnacles off the piers. So these are apparently good eating as well. But there is one characteristic, Jim, about this fish that distinguishes it from maybe all of the fish species. And you're going to go ahead and do a call-in right now for some caller, and I'm going to bring to the person who wins, I'm going to bring a little surprise gift from the Charleston coastal area, and we'll have that next week. So go ahead and tell people what the details are here.
Okay, the question is going to be...
what is the distinguishing characteristic of a sheep's head fish? Okay. It's got one notable thing.
Okay, we'll take whoever, the first caller with a correct answer at 287-3356. First caller with that correct answer wins the prize, and Butch brings that prize back with him from the coast of Charleston, South Carolina. 287-3356.
Great. Sheepshead fish, what is the one distinguishing characteristic? It's known for this all over the world. And just real quickly, because maybe some of you are wondering, they love breakwaters, muddy shallows, wrecks, piers, and the Gulf of Mexico. They're not migratory, but they do tend to move to offshore spawning grounds where the water temperature dips in the late autumn and the winter. So tell us what that is and call in right now. Now, Jim, I also was doing a little bit of research again. Soon after I moved here, I heard people talk about isothermal community college.
Yes.
And I had no idea what isothermal meant. And you know what? I can't say that I still do, but can you give me a quick summary of what it means to you, and then I'll tell you what I learned?
Isothermal, there's a warm, they call it belt, I guess, from right around this area. Supposedly, it remains warmer than all the surrounding areas outside of this thermal belt. It's a warmth. I don't know how wide that reaches out, but that's where the name came from. And isothermal belt, isothermal community college, and isothermal broadcasting derived its name from that warmth of that belt, ever how far it reaches, of warm air. I'm not sure that warm air is there because sometimes passing through isothermal community college, in wintertime, it'll be snowing there and not snowing here in Rutherford. So I'm not sure about that thermal belt.
That's called irony. That's called irony when you have snow accumulating there at isothermal community college. And, of course, isn't the holding company for WCAB, or it has been, Isothermal?
That's the corporation, yes, Isothermal Broadcasting Company. That's us.
Yeah, and so it comes as close to home as WCAB. Well, this is what the technical people say. The isothermal belt is a zone in western North Carolina, primarily in Rutherford and Polk counties. And they tell us there are temperature inversions that result in milder temperature. It contributes to longer growing seasons than in the immediate surrounding region. Now, we're also told the phenomenon usually occurs on the southern slopes of mountains and foothills protected from frost and freezing temperatures by higher mountains to the north and northwest. So now you may have wanted to know, I did, and that's the rest of the story, Jim.
Well, there may be a lot of truth in it, because this is certainly, it seemed to be watermelon growing country, because there's a lot of great watermelons growing in this area, and this year they have been extremely delicious. So I know a friend who has a lot of watermelons, and they grow so well right here in this area.
Well, and you know what's interesting to me is when you Google search growing in western North Carolina, there are so many different blogs and videos and websites. It's for example, I just wanted to know a little bit more, Jim, just because I did, about growing string beans, in the area. And so I actually early this morning read an article. I know there may be some people that say, Butch, really? But yeah, I did. And this article said if you plant them outside too early in the spring, they're going to die. And if you plant them too late, your green beans won't produce a harvest before the first frost arrives in the fall. In general, when there hasn't been a frost for 2 weeks, you're safe to plant your green beans outside in western North Carolina. Now, Jim, that's the rest of the story right there.
That's good news to have.
Well, and tuck that away in your museum of memories for all you gardeners next year. Now, I was also, as I got up early and was just praying about the day, I was coming off that little investigative effort on growing beans. I was reminded of times in the Bible, Jim, where beans are mentioned. By the way, there's a boat going by right now. They like to fish around the docks because they find fish there near the structure. So if you hear ambient noise, that's what that is. In any event, I started doing a little scripture word study about beans in the Bible, and there is a wonderful story that reminds me of what every patriot, every follower of Jesus who believes in God's special blessing on this country, every single one of us ought to remember a story that is so short over in 2 Samuel. I don't ever remember it being preached or mentioned before. I've done it once before, but it's a great story. It's in 2 Samuel chapter 23, right after the last Song of David. This was, of course, his sort of benediction on his life. But starting in verse 8, it talks to him about the mighty men, those mighty men that surrounded David. They were a motley crew in many respects. They were gnarly. They were rogue warriors, but they had a passion to defend their king, just as we need to have a passion to defend the kingdom of forever. There's a story that starts in verse 11. May I share that with you?
Yes.
Yeah. All right. So 2 Samuel 23, verse 11, going through the whole lineage of these mighty men, it says, next to Eleazar was Shammah, the son of Agee, the Hararite. The Philistines were gathered into an army where there was a plot of ground full of lentils. What are lentils? Beans. And the people of Israel fled from the Philistines. Now, let me stop there for a minute. Beans represent vitality. They represent life. I mean, it was the staple of food and sustenance for the children of Israel. The Philistines loved to plunder. They didn't like to plant. They'd like to steal what was not theirs instead of the hard work of creating furrows, letting the sun and the rain nurture and incubate those plants into a life-giving food source. They like to steal it, not plant it. And here you had, in the face of the Philistines gathering around their food, their sustenance, their life, the children of Israel did what? They fled. They ran. But not so the man we hear about in verse 12. Shammah took his stand in the center of the plot and defended it and struck down the Philistines, and the Lord brought about a great victory. Unafraid of the overwhelming odds, knowing that bean field did not belong to the Philistines, in the face of all of his friends, his fellow soldiers, and others fleeing in fear from the Philistines, he did what? He planted himself squarely in the middle of that bean field, that place of life and sustenance and health and God's provision, and he said, not on my watch. And one can only imagine the carnage of the single man with the power of God's presence defending the bean field for the children of Israel, not afraid of death, not afraid of what anyone else that was cowardly would say, not concerned about his own destiny, but knowing God was going to help him. And it says that single man, that single warrior, defended the bean field against the Philistines, and it says God brought about a great victory. Jim, every single person who has ever listened to My Great American says, I'm just one person. I can't do anything. It's only me. There aren't other voices. Any person who's ever listened to the lies of the evil one, who only comes to steal, kill, and destroy, you need to remember the timeless story of Shammah defending the bean fields against all of the infidels at the gate. And, Jim, we've got infidels at the gate of our country, and we are called to be in the spirit of the living God, just like Shammah, and defend the bean fields of Rutherford County, North Carolina, America, and the world. That's my little sermonette.
I love stories like that. I love stories like that. It's encouraging and challenging for all of us to take a stand, not be afraid, and don't whip out and be afraid to fight the enemy, because we're greater is he that is in us and he that is in the world.
That's exactly right. And whatever it might be, I mean, there are people who think, okay, because the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, I guess our work is done. No, our work's not done. Our work has only started, and we've got to make sure that love leads with everything we do. I'll use that as a quick example. You can't be anti-abortion and not be pro-life when it comes to helping these moms that keep their babies. You've got to be pro-adoption and pro-foster care, and we've got to get churches that are mobilized to stand in the gap. It is not going to go well for our nation or for a lot of these women that are in these situations if we're perceived as we're against abortion, but we have no open hearts nor open hands to help in practical ways. And so, Jim, this is a prime opportunity for the church to be the church, even people that aren't people of faith. If you're a patriot, if you're somebody that wants to see the rips and the tears and the infection and the venereal diseases of culture that are horrific, where truth is interpreted as whatever I believe is true. That's not truth. God's word is truth. His word is life. His word is a lamp unto our feet and a light unto our path. And so we cannot be passive and indifferent. Recently in my church, Word of Faith Fellowship, we had some people sharing about the whole principle of being passive and indifferent. God has a lot to say about lukewarm people. Just check out the church of Laodicea in the book of Revelation. God said, I'd rather you be hot or cold, not in between. It is not a time for in between anything. If you believe in the God of the universe who made the beauty of this area that I'm sitting in right now and the beauty of our county and the beauty of all you've experienced in life, it's time, as we often say, to suit up and show up and make a difference. You're not just passing through life trying to have a good time and a pleasant experience. God's not against it. Yeah.
There used to be a little song we sang as little kids growing up, this little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine. It goes on to say, hide it under a bushel? No, I'm going to let it shine. And that's what we need to do, is let that light shine and step forward and be in the fight.
Exactly, Jim. And, so many times people say, well, I can't speak, I can't write, I don't know anybody. Listen, that is a lie from the evil one. We're called to walk together. It's a song that we sing at my church. Why? Because in the presence of the Holy God, we are, when we're born again and people of faith, following his word, doing his will, trusting, obeying, being obedient. When we're doing that and we're doing it together, every single part of the body is needed. I've known people, for example, that are infirmed and they cannot get out of a wheelchair. An older woman whose name will go unmentioned, but I knew her to be somebody that crocheted items for unwed moms, and she would pray for them as she crocheted those items. Do you think God notices that? Absolutely. Absolutely. So we should never be intoxicated by a lie that somehow other people's roles are more important. It's simply not true. We all need each other, Jim. And I know through the years, because I've watched so many times people walking through that door to consult with you on a variety of matters. I know through the years, you've seen a lot of everyday heroes, haven't you?
Oh, absolutely, I have. They're out here, too, and many of them don't want the recognition, but they do things that help other people unbeknown. I know folks work on food lines once a month or once a week, and they never get any recognition, but they're there every week feeding those folks who are hungry. And I think they should be part of that. A part of that group is doing the right thing for the right reason.
Exactly, and it's a salutary exercise, and it's very sobering when we realize God knows every single motive of our hearts. And the people that quietly serve our county, the people that faithfully are involved in keeping us safe and protected. I had a great conversation recently with Aaron Ellenberg, and he was just sharing some of the things. We've got a sheriff's race that's upcoming in November. We've got 3 candidates there, Tony Roberson, Jerry Weiss, and Aaron Ellenberg. And Aaron was taking the time to share with me some of the areas that he really has a burden and a heart to see our county change in. And we've got elections that are important. We've got so many people in the United States that claim to be evangelical Christians. Some estimates are as high as 20 million people that aren't even registered to vote. And Jim, we cannot